So there's something about God's wisdom that makes him fail proof. He said, my ways are not your ways, neither are my thoughts your thoughts. He said, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. Remember in Jeremiah 29:11, it says, I know the thoughts that I think towards you, thoughts of peace, not of evil, to give you an expected end. There is something about God's wisdom such that when He has a preordained destination for you, it doesn't matter what happens in the process. It doesn't matter what happens in the journey. He will make sure His wisdom can always make sure you end the way He expects, the way He wanted you to end. And let's just take the life of Job as a case study. In the life of Job, from Job chapter 1, if you look at the Job chapter 1, Job chapter 2, and then you read chapter 42, what actually happened in Job chapter 42 was that verse 10, he said, God restored the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. That is actually what God actually wanted to do in chapter 1 and chapter 2, when the Bible says the sons of God came to present themselves and Satan also came. And God told Satan, he said, have you considered my servant Job, who is upright in all his ways? God was commending him in that way, I believe, because God was already thinking about promoting him. God was already thinking about giving him twice as much as he had, because when you read chapter 42, you find that Job had twice as much as he had. That's what God wanted to do. That was the preordained destination. That is what God wanted to end with. But then Satan said, he does not fear you for nothing. He does not worship you for nothing. The reason he fears you, the reason he worships you, the reason he respects you is because you have made a hedge around him such that nothing can touch him. So at that point, you know that God never intended for the devil to do anything, but God gave the devil, God gave Satan permission. He said, okay, since you believe that is the situation, he said, okay, all that he has is in your hands. Go and do whatever you want. And Satan left the presence of God to go and do everything he wanted with Job. Now, all of that was happening to Job was not part of God's plan. Remember, God's plan was to give Job twice as much as he had. But with everything that happened in the life of Job, in the end, God still gave him twice as much as he had. So, what am I trying to say is that no matter what happens, remember the Bible says, Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to them that love God and to them that are called according to his purpose. So it doesn't matter what happens in your life. He never said it is some things that work together for good. He never said there are certain particular things that work together for good. He said all things work together for good. But there are two conditions. Number one condition is that you love God. Number two condition is that you are called according to his purpose. Once these two conditions are met, you should be sure that it doesn't matter what happens in your life, no matter how tragic, no matter how bad, no matter how terrible, instead of complaining, God, why me? You know that it is definitely going to work together for good. So no matter what happens in your life, look around your life. Ask yourself, do I love God? Ask yourself, am I called according to his purpose? If the answer to those two questions is yes, then you can be sure that it doesn't matter what it is that happened, it is going to work together for good. That is the wisdom of God. That is how God's wisdom is higher than every other wisdom. That is how God can manipulate. If you look at the situations around Joseph's life, it is not the will of God for any of his own to suffer. But Joseph suffered in so many ways, and you know that it was not necessarily the will of God for Joseph to suffer several of the things that he suffered. It was not necessarily God's will, but somehow God found a way to turn everything to work together to bring him to that expected end. Remember the dreams he had, with all the challenges on the way, him being sold into slavery, brought to Potiphar's house, and even taken into prison. With all of that, everything still worked together for good. One, because Joseph loved God. How do I know that he loved God? When he was in the prison with the two prisoners, and they had the dream, and they were both sad because they didn't know the meaning. Joseph said, does not dream interpretation come from God? In other words, he knew God and he loved God. Number two, he was called according to God's purpose. God called him to preserve a posterity. So God had to ensure that no matter what happens, he was still brought to an expected end. So it doesn't matter what happens to you. It doesn't matter what happens around you. Just remember this, that all things, not some things, not certain things, not few things, but all things work together for good if those two conditions are met. Number one, if you love God. Number two, if you are called according to his purpose. God bless you.